Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Again, my name is Dr. Richard Arjun Kaul. I'm 50 years old, and children, think that's ancient, but I don't feel any different to the way I was when I was 30. But throughout my education and my career, I've had many different interests. Medicine happened to be one of them, but I was fascinated by a lot of other topics. When I was 16, I actually wanted to go off to university and study economics and philosophy. And then when I was going through my residency, the early years of my residency, it was about the time that the war in Bosnia was going on. And I remember watching the footage of the photojournalists who were out there, and it fascinated me. And I think what fascinated me about it was the fact that these people who were there, under the protection of the press, supposedly, were getting to witness history in the making. And that history was one of my other great loves. From when I was 9-10 years old, I was fascinated with history. But these people were there witnessing, being a part of the making of history. And the other element, I must admit, that also fascinated me about it, and I think this was one of the elements that somehow pulled me into medicine as well, there's the question of life and death, the line between life and death and what happens on that line, where it's like every human being goes through life, we're born, we live, and then we die. But that point where the transition is made and, whatever spiritual, religious or philosophical position you take, there's a moving away from the body of the spirit. Now, I started to think about maybe, taking a sabbatical from medicine and going out to Bosnia with my camera and, trying to take some pictures and become a photojournalist. So around about this time, I went to the New School for Social Research in New York, and I took a 6-month course learning how, to work a camera and, to engage in being a photojournalist. And I also became very interested in a very famous British photojournalist called Don McCullin. And he came up with this book, which I would highly recommend people purchase. It's called Sleeping with Ghosts. And it's a collection of his work of approximately, I'd say 30 or 40 years. And Don McCullin had covered all of the quote hotspots around the world, starting in the 1950s up until the 1980s, 1990s. And when you go through the book, it's all in black and white, which I think lends a real depth to the pictures. And when you go through the book, you yourself, through his photography, will feel as if you are actually there. And so, the world of photojournalism was always of great interest to me. Now, I'm sure, as all of you know, there's been a big furore here in the States with a gentleman called Brian Williams. Scandal about a gentleman by the name of Brian Williams, who was a reporter and a photojournalist for NBC. And the scandal, if you will, was that he was supposedly going to these conflict zones for many years, and he was one of the top reporters at NBC. Had an impeccable reputation, and had developed a really well-respected name. But what came to light was that he had been misrepresenting some of the details about his stories. So, for example, there was one particular story where he claimed that he was in a plane, and the plane that he was in came under mortar fire, when in fact he was in the plane behind the plane that came under mortar fire. That was one of a number of exaggerations and misrepresentations that he allegedly made. And, to his great credit, he, came and he admitted that this is what had happened. Now, listening to him make these admissions, I, in a way, understood why he was doing this or why he had done this. The world of photojournalism and the desire for these reporters and photographers to get the story, to get the shot, is so competitive and so intense, and they're all chasing after this story. There's good and bad in that. The good is that you know that if something's happening around the world and it needs to be exposed, that it will be exposed because you have people of this particular nature going after these stories. However, it also takes people sometimes down the wrong path, and it leads to an abuse of their position, whereby they will misreport and misrepresent details of stories for their own particular gain and their own agendas. And I think that Mr. Williams, I think this is most likely what happened with him. He'd been on the front line for so many years, and he'd probably been getting away with misreporting these stories. But, as I said, he admitted these failings, and today I found out that he's actually been taken back by the station, which I think is a great thing. And I think that also talks, when I was reading about this story, that also talks to what's a uniquely American phenomenon, is the ability to forgive and to give people a second chance, which I think is a great thing, because I think a man such as Brian Williams, who has incredible talents and experience, to have just cast him to one side and forgotten all the good work that he's done, I think would have been a waste to society. And so I would like to say I'm very pleased to hear that he's coming back, and I'm very impressed that NBC have decided to take him back onto their show. Now, the other day I was having a discussion with somebody about Brian Williams, and we were talking about why it was that he had done it. Was it arrogance? Was it greed? Was it a lack of intelligence? And I growing up, I, as I said before, I had many interests, and one of them was philosophy. And one of the great philosophers, actually, who helped me personally through many parts of my life and has been a very influential force in the world, is a gentleman by the name of Krishnamurti. And I bought a book. It's called Think on These Things. And I bought this book when I was 14 years old, just after my mother had died. And, when things like that happen, people want answers. They want to know why. When terrible things take place, people are questioning, like, what's the purpose of this tragedy? We believe in God. Why is it that this terrible thing has happened? And so, I read his book, but the paragraph that I'd like to read relates to intelligence, which is one of the things that people were talking about. And when he was talking, giving his philosophical opinions, he quite often would do it in a question and answer format. And so he had groups of students that would sit in front of him. Usually, he was based in California when he was here in the States, and he would be sitting under some oak tree in some sunny Californian park, and all of his listeners would be sitting there. And one student asked this question, which I think is a very interesting question. The question was, how is one to become intelligent? And his answer was, the moment you try to become intelligent, you cease to be intelligent. This is really important. So give your mind to it a little bit. If I'm stupid, and everybody tells me that I must become intelligent. What generally happens? I struggle to become intelligent. I study more. I try to get better marks. Then people say, he is working harder, and pat me on the back. But I continue to be stupid because I have only acquired the trimmings of intelligence. So the problem is not how to become intelligent, but how to be free of stupidity. If, being stupid, I try to become intelligent, I'm still functioning stupidly. You see, the basic problem is that of change. When you ask, what is intelligence? And how is one to become intelligent? It implies a concept of what intelligence is. And then you try to become like that concept. Now, to have a formula, a theory, or concept of what intelligence is, and to try to mold yourself according to that pattern is foolish, is it not? Whereas, if one is dull and begins to find out what dullness is without any desire to change it into something else, without saying, I am dull, stupid, how terrible, then one will find that in unravelling the problem there comes an intelligence free of stupidity and without effort. Now, I've always loved that paragraph about intelligence, but his message is essentially be who you are. And if I could sit Brian Williams down with me and have a conversation with him, I'd say, Brian, just be who you are. And I suspect if he had just been who he was, he probably would not have gotten himself into the hot water that he did. Thank you.